At midnight, my phone rang. The sound cut through the silence of my little house like a knife. I reached for it with a shaky hand and saw my brother's name on the screen. When I answered, his voice was trembling. He whispered, "Henry, don't look at the window." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My brother had never sounded like that before. Before I could even ask what he meant, something tapped against the glass behind me. I froze. My chest tightened, and I felt my heart stop. If you want to know what happened next, stay with me. And before we go deeper, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Henry Callahan. I'm 78 years old, a retired school teacher, and I live alone in a quiet house at the edge of town. My days are simple, reading old history books, listening to the radio, and drinking tea on the porch. Life has slowed down for me, but I have always been grateful that my younger sister, Ellie, lives close by. She is 65 now, but to me, she's the same girl who held my hand when we were children. After our parents died, it was just the two of us and our brother Thomas. We leaned on each other through every hardship. Ellie still checks on me almost every day. She brings groceries, cooks soup, and makes sure I don't forget to take my medicine. She laughs at my old jokes, even when they aren't funny anymore. Sometimes I think I would have gone mad without her. That evening had been like any other. The house smelled faintly of tea, the clock ticked softly on the wall, and the woods outside my window were quiet. I had turned in early, ready for another night of peaceful sleep. But before I went to bed, I remembered Ellie's words earlier that week. She had stood at the back door, staring into the dark woods, and said with a little smile, "You should keep your curtains closed at night. The trees out there feel like they're watching." I had laughed it off, but when the phone rang at midnight and I heard Thomas's shaking voice telling me not to look at the window, her warning came rushing back into my mind. And then came the sound. Tap, 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 right against the glass. I gripped the phone tightly, pressing it so hard against my ear that my hand began to ache. "Thomas," I whispered, "what are you talking about? Why shouldn't I look at the window?" His breath came fast on the other end of the line. He didn't answer right away, which made my stomach twist with dread. Finally, in a voice I could barely recognize, he said, "Just listen to me, Henry. Whatever happens, don't turn your head. And for God's sake, don't let Ellie go outside tonight." The line went dead before I could ask another question. I sat there in my armchair, staring straight ahead, afraid to move. The air in the room felt thick, as if something invisible was pressing against my chest. I could hear the tick of the clock on the wall, each second dragging, longer than the last. Then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. A slow, deliberate sound against the glass behind me. Not a branch, not the wind. This was something else. I wanted to tell myself it was nothing, but every part of me knew better. My brother's fear was real. Thomas was a man who had survived wars, accidents, and all the troubles of a hard life. He never panicked. If his voice had shaken like that, there was a reason. I swallowed hard and tried to gather my courage. My knees trembled as I stood. "Stay calm," I muttered under my breath. "Don't be a fool, Henry." But the thought of Ellie weighed on me. My sister was the light in my old life. I couldn't let anything happen to her. And then, as if on cue, I heard the crunch of gravel outside. My heart dropped. Through the crack of the front door, I saw the faint beam of headlights fade, and a moment later, a gentle knock. "Henry, it's me," Ellie's voice called. "I brought you some soup." My throat tightened. She had picked the worst night to stop by. I rushed to the door, trying not to make noise, my old cane tapping against the floor with each step. "Ellie," I hissed, "come inside quickly and don't look toward the back window." She stepped inside, confused, holding the pot wrapped in a towel. Her kind face, framed with gray hair pulled back in a bun, looked at me with concern. "What's wrong? Why are you whispering?" Before I could answer, the tapping grew louder. Tap, tap, tap. As if whatever was outside wanted to make sure we both heard it. Ellie's eyes flicked toward the sound, and I grabbed her arm. "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't look." Her brow furrowed. "Henry, you're scaring me. What's going on?" I tried to steady my voice. "Thomas called. He told me not to look. He told me to keep you inside. Please, just trust me." She didn't argue, but I could see the fear slowly rising in her face. She set the pot down on the counter, her hands shaking. The room felt smaller now, every shadow stretching across the walls like they were alive. My old dog, Rusty, who usually slept by the fire, lifted his head and began to growl low and deep. He never growled without reason. The tapping stopped. The silence that followed was worse. It felt like the house was holding its breath, waiting. Then came a new sound, scratching. Long, slow scratches sliding down the glass, like fingernails dragging on a chalkboard. Ellie gasped and pressed her hand against her chest. "Henry," she whispered, "what if someone's out there?" I shook my head. "That's no someone," I said. "Not anyone human." My mind raced. I thought about the years Ellie had cared for me, how she had sacrificed her own life to make sure her brothers were never alone. I could not let her be the one to suffer tonight. If something wanted us, it would have to go through me first. I took my cane in one hand and reached for the flashlight on the shelf. Its weight felt cold and heavy. "Stay behind me," I told her. "No matter what happens, do not go near that window." Her lips trembled as she nodded. The room was filled with the sound of Rusty's growl, the ticking clock, and my own pounding heart. Outside, the scratching turned back into tapping, this time faster, sharper, like knuckles rapping against the glass. I held the flashlight tightly, every muscle in my body screaming from the tension. I was an old man, weak compared to what I had once been, but I was still a brother, and I swore on everything I had left that nothing would take Ellie away from me tonight. The tapping against the glass grew harder, faster, like impatient knuckles knocking at a door that should never be opened. Every strike sent a shiver through me, rattling not just the window, but my chest. I tightened my grip on the cane in one hand and the flashlight in the other. My whole body felt heavy, stiff from fear, but inside my chest something fierce began to grow. I was no soldier, no young man with strength to fight. I was just Henry Callahan, an old teacher, long past my prime. But Ellie was here, trembling just a few steps behind me, and I knew I could not sit frozen in that chair, waiting for the glass to break. I turned to her and spoke as firmly as I could. "Ellie, you need to stay behind me. No matter what you see or hear, do not go near that window." She nodded quickly, her lips pale, but I saw the way her eyes darted toward the sound. She wanted to know what was out there just as badly as I did, but curiosity was dangerous. "Promise me," I said, raising my voice. "You'll stay behind me." Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I promise." That word steadied me more than anything else could have. For years she had cared for me, cooking, visiting, laughing at my tired old jokes, making sure I didn't fade away into loneliness. Now it was my turn to protect her, even if it was the last thing I ever did. I took a deep breath and shuffled closer to the back of the room, where the large window looked out onto the woods. My legs trembled with every step, and the floor creaked beneath my weight. The tapping paused, as if whatever stood on the other side could sense my movement. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. Rusty, my dog, growled low, his hackles rising. He stared at the glass, teeth bared, ready to spring. His body was stiff, his tail tucked, and I knew he sensed something unnatural. I whispered to him, "Good boy. Stay ready." I raised the flashlight, my thumb resting on the switch, ready to flood the room with light at the first sign of danger. My cane felt like a poor weapon, but it was all I had. In that moment, I realized the truth. I was too old to fight with my fists, too weak to chase anything off, but I could still stand tall. I could still face the fear directly. Ellie's voice shook behind me. "Henry, please, maybe we should call the police." I shook my head. "And tell them what? That something's knocking on my window? They wouldn't come fast enough, and they wouldn't believe us if they did. This is our fight tonight." She fell silent, though I could hear her uneven breathing. Then it started again. Scratch, scratch. Long, slow, deliberate lines running down the glass. It wasn't trying to get in yet. It was waiting for me to look. My brother's warning echoed in my head. "Don't look at the window." But every second we stood there, the pressure built. The thing outside wanted us frozen in fear until we gave in. I couldn't let it have that power. I tightened my grip and made my choice. I was going to look. If I didn't, I would spend the rest of my life wondering, and worse, I would leave Ellie forever haunted by what might have been outside. I turned back to her once more. Ellie, listen carefully. If anything happens, you run. Don't wait for me. Don't argue. Just get out of this house. Her face twisted in panic. No, I'm not leaving you here. Yes, you are, I said firmly. You're the only reason I've made it this far in life. I'm not letting anything take you tonight. Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. That was enough. The scratching stopped again, replaced by the faint sound of breath fogging the glass. I could hear it, shallow and uneven, as though the window itself was exhaling. My whole body trembled, but I raised the flashlight, ready to face whatever horror was waiting. The choice was made. I would look at the window, and I would face it head on. I planted my cane firmly on the floor and drew in one last steadying breath. My love for Ellie gave me the strength I thought I had lost. I turned my head toward the glass. The moment I turned my head, the world seemed to stop. The window pane, slick with faint fog, framed something that froze the blood in my veins. A face pressed against the glass, inches away from me, pale, hollow-eyed. Its grin stretched unnaturally wide, far beyond the way a human mouth should move. For one awful second, I thought it was Ellie. The face had her features, her same soft jawline, the faint crease near the brow she had carried since youth. But it wasn't her. The skin was too tight, almost stretched over bone. The eyes were wrong, dark, empty holes that seemed to swallow the light from the room. And the smile, that impossible smile. Behind me, I felt Ellie stiffen. She had seen it too. Her voice cracked with horror. Henry, that's me. It looks like me. The thing tilted its head slowly, as though it heard her words and wanted to confirm them. Its movements were jerky, delayed, like a puppet pulled by strings. When Ellie raised a trembling to her mouth, the thing lifted its own hand to the glass, a fraction of a second late, mirroring her. Stay back, I barked, forcing my voice to be strong, even as my chest heaved with fear. Don't go near it. The figure's grin widened further, the skin around its mouth tearing at the corners as if it was splitting open from the force of its own smile. A dark liquid smeared across the glass where its lips touched. Rusty erupted in furious barking, teeth bared, launching toward the window. The sudden noise made the figure jolt, and the glass shuddered as if something heavy had slammed into it from the outside. Thin cracks spidered across the pane. Ellie screamed and clutched my arm. It's trying to get in! I pulled her back, positioning myself between her and the window. My cane shook in one hand, but the flashlight felt like my only weapon of truth. You want me? I shouted at the figure. Then face me. The grin vanished in an instant. The hollow eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, I felt as though something was reaching inside my head, searching. My knees buckled, but I forced myself to stay upright. I would not fall in front of it. The glass cracked louder, splintering with every tap of its long, pale fingers. The sound was unbearable, like bones snapping. My brother's warning rang in my mind again. Don't look at the window. But I had already looked, and there was no turning back now. With all the strength I had, I raised the flashlight and clicked it on. A sharp beam of white light cut through the darkness and struck the creature full in the face. The reaction was instant. Its grin twisted into a snarl, and it let out a silent scream that shook the air itself. Though no sound came through the glass, my ears rang as if thunder had exploded inside my skull. The creature's skin blistered under the light, dark veins rising like cracks in stone. Henry! Keep it there! Ellie cried, gripping my shoulder. I planted my cane firmly and held the beam steady. My arm burned with the effort, but I would not lower it. The figure clawed at the glass, its fingernails screeching against the pane as if desperate to reach us. The cracks widened, one long fracture running from top to bottom. The house seemed to groan under the pressure. Rusty lunged again, barking with wild fury, and for a split second, I feared the glass would shatter, letting the thing spill inside. But then, with a violent shudder, the figure recoiled, its face contorted in rage, then in pain, before it dissolved into a haze of shadow. One moment it was there, pressed against the glass. The next, the window was empty, the forest outside still and black as death. I held the flashlight steady on the empty pane for what felt like hours, waiting for it to return. My chest heaved, my throat dry, but no face appeared. Only our own reflection stared back at us now. Mine, old and lined with terror, and Ellie's, pale with shock, but alive. Finally, my arm gave out, and I lowered the beam. I stumbled back into the chair, gasping for air. Ellie rushed to my side, clutching my hand tightly. Rusty settled near my feet, growling low, his body still tense, ready to spring again, if needed. Ellie whispered, her voice trembling, "Henry, what was that? Why did it look like me?" I shook my head, unable to give her an answer. The truth was, I didn't know. But as I looked at her face, the real face, warm with life, shining with fear and love, I knew one thing. Whatever that thing had been, it wanted to steal her from me, to replace her, to take what I cherished most. The glass was cracked but unbroken. Somehow, we had kept it out, but I knew deep down that this was not the end. The way it had stared at me, the way it had mirrored her, told me it wasn't finished. It would wait, watching from the woods, waiting for another night when my courage might fail. I squeezed Ellie's hand with all the strength I had left. "Not tonight," I said firmly, more to myself than to her. "Not tonight." And for the first time that night, I saw something in her eyes other than fear. It was pride. Pride in me, her old brother, who had found the strength to protect her when it mattered most. The house was silent after the creature vanished, but the silence was not comforting. It was the kind of silence that presses against your ears, making you feel like the world outside is holding its breath, waiting. I sat back in my chair, Kane leaning against my leg, the flashlight still warm in my trembling hand. My chest rose and fell, as if I had just run a race, though all I had done was stand against a window. My old body ached in ways I hadn't felt in years, but none of that mattered. Ellie was still beside me, alive, real, safe. She knelt by my side, her hands still clutching mine. "Henry," she whispered, "what did we just see? What was that thing?" I looked into her eyes and wished I had an answer that could comfort her, but I didn't. The truth was that I didn't know if it was a ghost, a demon, or something older than either word could describe. What I did know, deep in my bones, was that it wanted her. It had taken her face, her mannerisms, her very presence, and twisted them into something hollow. That wasn't a stranger outside the glass. That was a thief, wearing her skin mask, waiting for the chance to step inside and take her place. I shook my head slowly. I don't know what it was, but it's gone now, and as long as I'm here, it's not getting to you. Her eyes tears, and she buried her face on my shoulder. I held her close, and for a moment I felt like older brother again, strong enough to carry her through anything. My body might have been weak, but my love for her was stronger than any fear. Rusty circled near the window, growling low, his body stiff, alert. He refused to settle, and that told me the danger wasn't truly. Whatever had pressed its face against my glass, it might be gone but it hadn't disappeared forever. It was waiting, watching, testing us. The phone rang again, making both of us jump. My heart nearly gave out. Shock. I picked it up with a shaking hand. It was Thomas. "Henry," he said quickly. "Are you still there? Did you see it?" I swallowed hard. Yes, we both did. It looked like Ellie. It tried to get in. There was a heavy pause on the line. When Thomas spoke again, his voice carried the weight of someone who had seen this before. "It came to my house too. It looked like me. Henry, it's not just you. These things are moving through the woods. They're looking for ways inside. Don't open the door. Don't answer the window. Don't trust your own eyes." I felt my blood run cold. This wasn't an isolated nightmare. It was happening beyond my house, beyond my window. "What do they want?" I asked. Thomas's voice dropped to a whisper. "They want to replace us." The line went quiet after that. I didn't know if he had hung up or if something else had silenced him. Ellie gripped my hand tighter, fear flashing across her face. "What do we do now?" she asked. I looked at her, and then at the cracked glass of the window. The faint marks of fingernails were still etched into it, a scar the house would carry forever. I knew we couldn't erase what happened, and I knew the danger wasn't gone. But I also knew one thing. Tonight, we had survived. And as long as we stood together, maybe we could survive again. I turned back to Ellie and gave her hand a squeeze. We live, I said. We live, and we don't let them take us. That's what we do. She nodded slowly, her breathing steadying at last. We sat together in silence, waiting for the night to pass. When the first gray light of dawn crept through the cracks of the curtains, I finally felt the weight in my chest lift. The woods outside were still and quiet, but I knew they were not empty. Somewhere in those trees, something was waiting, patient as time itself. I would never again look at the forest the same way. Even now, as I tell you this, I sometimes hear it at night, that faint tapping at the glass, that slow, deliberate scratch that sets every hair on my body on end. I don't look anymore. I won't give it that power again, but I know it's out there, and I know it's waiting for the moment I slip. If you're listening to me now, take this as a warning. When someone you trust calls you at night and tells you not to look at the window, you listen. You hold on to the ones you love, and you do not let fear tear you apart. Because sometimes, fear is the only thing keeping you alive. So if you want more stories like this, make sure you subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from.